Hello everybody, it's Professor Horlacher, and here as promised is the video for the review for Test 3, which is on Friday. And as I was saying today in class, we've had 3 new topics since our last test, and those are the 6/4 chords, where to use them, and there are 4 types of them, and the where to use them comes out by what type they are, so not every 6/4 chord would fit always in the same place. The 4 types are the arpeggiated, the pedal, the passing, and the cadential, which is the only one that gets a Roman numeral label because it always has scale degree 5 in the bass. The other ones can have different scale degrees in the bass. This is the least common of the ones. I'm going to spend some time talking about the other 3 in the slides that have to come up. Okay. The next topic we learned is we added some predominants to our phrase model. The 2 chords that we added in major keys are 2 and 2/6, and in minor the 2 diminished 6, but not the 2 diminished 5/3, since it's not very common to use diminished triads in root position. We added the 4 chord to our repertory as a predominant as well. In a major key, that turned out to be major 4 and 6, and in a minor key, that turned out to be a minor triad 4 and a 4/6. And the thing always to remember about all of these when they are in minor is that scale degree 6 has to go down to 5 to avoid the augmented second problem. Okay, we also learned a way of making our solutions sound a little fancier, a little more direct decorated by some new non-chord tone types. And I'm going to spend some time talking about where we can find places to use suspensions in the solutions we're going to solve. All of these things have one thing in common, and that is it helps us create phrases that are more goal-directed. So before this, we had lots of ways of decorating one with various kinds of passing and neighbor chords, and then we would reach a cadence. But what we've done now is found other ways of making this phrase sound a little bit more sophisticated and a little bit more like real music. So this is where we typically put the predominant chords, the cadential 6/4 chord. Let's make a nice little path around here. Usually comes in right here. And the other chords from this category can go any number of places. All right, let's go on to slide number 2. This is a bass line with no figures associated with it. And so first thing we're going to do is figure out what harmonies belong where. And on a test, I would typically ask you to do 3 things. One is to use a 6/4 chord. Another is to use some kind of predominant harmony. And the third is to add a decorative suspension. So let's do some planning first so we know where these things will come in. All right. And always a good idea to familiarize yourself with the sound of the exercise. Pretty clear that this is a D minor exercise. Begins and ends on D with a 5/1. Okay, I hope you'll sing along with me here. I'm going to sing using scale degree numbers. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 1. Okay, very nice bass line because it sounds almost like a melody. As a matter of fact, it could be a melody because it's got all that nice stepwise motion in it. Okay. Let's think about some of the things that we know formulaically that will work very easily in here. That pattern of 1, 2, 3 in the bass, we've got a lot of possibilities for how that might work. I know that scale degree 5 always has a 5 harmony under it. This exercise has given me 2 beats of 5, here and here, before it resolves to a 1 chord. This would be a terrific place, therefore, for a cadential 6/4 chord. Gives me something to do to intensify the cadence by adding a 6/4 before the 5/3. Okay. Right before the 5 chord is a likely place for a predominant to go. Okay. And it looks like that this phrase right here should do something about decorating the tonic. And then we'd have a really nicely shaped phrase. A tonic extension, a predominant, and a nicely developed cadence with a 6/4 chord in it. So that would take care of two of my requirements, and I'll add the suspension to it once I get some parts to decorate. So maybe the first thing I'll do is add a soprano line. In class today, we used this formula, 1, 2, 3 in the bass and 3, 2, 1 in the soprano. And I'm sure you're getting tired of that formula. There are a lot of other things we could do, 1, 7, 1, 3, 4, 5. But this one works particularly well if we're reviewing the 6/4 chords, because passing 6/4 chords work really well when there is passing motion, stepwise motion, in the bass line between one version of a harmony and another version of a harmony. So here I have a tonic that's being extended. Now before we talked about the 6/4 chords, we put 5, 4, 3 there. We also put 7 diminished 6 there. And now here is our third option for that chord, a passing 6/4. Okay. Let's work on the end of this exercise as well for the soprano. Cadential 6/4s have two sopranos that are extremely common. One is to close 3, 2, 1. That makes anything sound very end-like, to start moving downward and ending on 1. The other one is very similar to it. It's 1, 7, 1. How about, since I've already done 3, 2, 1 at the start here, I decide to go 1, 7, and I'm remembering to raise my leading tone. And that's a D, even if it isn't quite legible as a D. 1, 7, 1. And I could fit either a 2 diminished 6 or a 4 chord, where that scale degree 4 is in the bass, because 2 contains either of those. If I choose a 4, my soprano is going to go 3, 2, 1, 1, 1, 7, 1, simply because there is a scale degree 1 in a 4, not a scale degree 2. So a 2 might make a nicer soprano line. 3, 2, 1, 2, 1, 7, 1. Okay, so let's go with that. I'm going to go through the inner parts a little bit quickly here. Maybe I'll start on some things that are really, really fixed. I know that the passing 6/4 chord right here has to double the bass. All right, well that already happened. It needs a 6th and a 4th above it. So I know how to spell it. And once I know that, it's pretty easy to surround it with the 2 1 chords. Okay, going from 1 to 2. This can be a trick, because anytime you go from a root of 1 to a root of 2, you've moved a step, and the chances of getting parallels are pretty high. I can see where those parallels are likely to happen because I see 2 Ds, one in the soprano and one in the tenor. So I have to be really sure that my tenor does not go up to E, since my soprano is doing that. So I think I'll take my tenor down to B flat, and since the A could fall to a G, I haven't created any voice leading troubles because my bass is moving up to G. And remember that lowered scale degree 6s go down to 5, so I'll double the bass of the cadential 6/4 chord by using a unison. So I have both the tenor and the bass on A, and there's the 6th above the chord. And there's a solution. What if I want a suspension? Well, I'm going to look for stepwise movement down to a 3rd above the bass, or stepwise movement down to the 6th above the bass. Suspensions can go anywhere in a phrase, but here I happen to see a great opportunity. I see a 3rd above the bass, and if I changed my tenor line to add a seventh to the 5/7 chord, I could get to that third above the bass by a step. And so I'm going to add a 4/3 suspension here so that G is held over and then resolves to the F. The F got delayed just a little bit. I'm going to play this through. I think that I'll sing the tenor part right now. You can replay this video a couple of times and decide to sing various parts if you'd like. Here it is, and here I'm going to sing the tenor part. 1, 7, 1. Let me start again. 1, 7, 1, 6, 5, 5, 4, 4, 3. Right there. Good. There's a solution. Now I'm going to go on to the next slide. For those of you that want to try this with a blank solution, there's one on slide number 3 here. And so you could try this again on your own, go back and see what I did. Now I'm going to go on to a soprano line. So here is a soprano line, and I'll leave this one blank so you can try it on your own before we solve it. And here it is one more time. And this is going to have the same 3 requirements. Use a 6/4 chord, use a predominant, use a suspension. Only this time we're given a soprano instead of a bass line. All right, this one is in the key of E minor. Let's sing it by scale degrees. 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1, 7, 1. Okay, good. Again, I'm going to work on things that are really clear at the start. We just talked about 1, 7, 1 in a soprano as being a great chance to use a cadential 6/4 chord. So I'm going to just go ahead and put that in there. 5, 6, 4, 5, 3, 1. Good. Okay, here's 1, 2, 3. That would be another chance to go 3, 2, 1 in the bass and put a passing 6/4 chord in there just like we did a minute ago. We can talk about some other options for that as well. And here is 3/4/3. That's another pattern that we have a number of formulas for. Here's the great place for the predominant, right before that cadential 6/4. Scale degree 2 in there. So I can't use 2 in root position since it's diminished. I can't use 4 because 4 doesn't have a scale degree 2 in it. So 2/6 is my choice, and there's the bass note for a 2/6. Okay. Let's think about what could go with 1, 2, 3. Here is our 3, 2, 1. That solution would give us the opportunity to do a passing 6/4 chord in here just like we did in the previous video. Some of these you already know. You could also do 1, 7, 1 here. You can also put something of the 5 variety in the chord that precedes it. However, I would not so certain that it would be a great idea, although I can see why you would be tempted to do this. Isn't it nice that my soprano went entirely upwards by steps? 7, 1, 2, 3. And it would be kind of cool in the bass to go 4, 3, 2, 1. Little bit difficult to get all my inner parts stuck in there because they're so close to one another. So let's see if I can erase that note. There, that's pretty cool. I'm going to think of another kind of 5 chord that would fit in this particular case and give me a little bit more space. So instead of putting the A in the bass, and remember 5 is spelled B, D sharp, F sharp, A. How about instead of getting that A in there, I go down a little bit to F sharp. Still lets me keep a stepwise bass, and I've got a little bit of space there. That turns out to be a 5/4/3. These chords in inversion have to be complete, and so I can get all my 4 voices in. With a 5/4/2, I wouldn't have been able to do that. Remember that the 7th resolves, so I'll have a unison bass and tenor doubling there. And this looks just about the same as we did in the previous slide, only with the bass line going. Okay, what we have left is this 3-4-3. And I'd like to do something other than a 5 chord right here. Though it certainly would be possible, I'd like to talk about using the 4 chord in a way that we've learned just over the past couple of weeks. Okay. One thing I could do would be to have a pedal 6-4 here. I'm going to put that in parentheses as one idea. And that would make the bass line go E, 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 right here. I'd just be decorating the 1 chord with a 6 and a 4th above the bass that returned to a 5 and a 3 above the bass. That's certainly a possibility. Some of you might be wondering, well, I thought these were usually on weak beats, and you're right, they are. If it sounds offensive, and I'll play it for you in a minute, we could replace it with something else. So instead of the pedal 6-4, here I'm going to go back to my fancy eraser. Think of another solution that's very similar to the pedal 6-4, because the pedal 6-4 with a scale degree 1 in the bass uses the same pitches as a 4 chord. So I could also neighbor the 1 chord with a 4 chord, and that's a usage that we've learned recently. Voice leading works out pretty well. I like to double the root in a root position chord, and so I added the 3rd and the 5th. And then we're back, and the rest of it will turn out the same. Okay, let's hear what this sounds like. Here's E minor, and so I'm going to have that nice starting chord and move up to a 1-6, passing 6-4. This would be the pedal 6-4 solution. And now I'm going to do the root position 4 solution. That sounds perhaps a little bit more natural to you. The last thing we want to talk about here is inserting a suspension. So let me finish off this 2 chord in order to do that. And this is interesting. That's a tenor stem there. Okay, I see in this particular situation, A up to F sharp is a 6th above the bass. And it comes from a downward descending step. So here would be a chance for me to change that 2-6 chord into a 2-6 chord with a 7-6 suspension on it. That's what the label would look like. And what would happen to my soprano line is that it would be G, F sharp. I would delay that G over the beat, over the bar line. Right there, I don't know if you can see that, but I've held that G over a little bit. And then I've added a 7-6 suspension, and I'll play that for you. Oh, that really does make the cadence, the phrase have a lot more shape, some decoration in it. Okay, I'll see you on Friday, and good luck on the test.